So you can mine's.
That's half past already.
So that's 8 o'clock. Right. Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Strategy and Resources Committee. For those who you don't know, Mary and Chester aren't actually on this committee, but I've invited them to sit here, participate. Okay, that's okay. Yeah, has that right to do that. Clearly, they won't be able to vote on anything. So, just wondering if we. Like you're going backwards, Robert. Don't worry.
No, you're missing Mary.
Sorry, Mary. So we're just technical.
That's it.
There, that's it.
That's better.
Thank you, Master.
Yeah, that's good. I can see everybody. Thank you.
Oh.
So let's get going. Apologies.
Yes, we've received apologies from councillors Anderson, Horskins, Kennedy, Nagra and Rowland. Councillor Horskins is attending virtually. Councillors Nagra and Rowland asked for links and said they would try to attend virtually, but
We do have somebody else who is attending virtually. I'm not sure who they are. They've got their hand up. Who's that with their hand up? You'll need to unmute your microphone. I'm guessing it's Beth or Majid.
Mostly Beth.
both councillors Nagra and Rowland said they were going to try and attend online, so it looks like possibly one of them is.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Welcome.
Chairman, it's me that's got my hand up, and I haven't actually sent my apologies. I'm attending online, and if this were a borough council meeting, I would be able to vote as well.
No, you can't.
No, you wouldn't. Sorry, Beth. But let's not go down that path. This is a town council meeting. It's not a borough meeting.
Can I say I can't hear any of you? The sound is not good at all. I don't know if Robert can hear.
Yeah, I can hear everyone okay. I have got earbuds in, Beth, which helps a lot.
Oh, right. I haven't got earbuds, but I can't hear you.
But try and
Well, I
speak
can hear
up.
sound, but it's not clear. Could you speak up?
I will ask everybody to speak out, but ultimately we can only do what we can do, I'm afraid. Right, I would like to move on, please. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest, anyone?
I don't think so.
Looking, no. Minutes of the meeting held on 26th of November 2024. Can I approve those? All those, please show. So that's everyone, isn't it? So I'm doing your job.
No, it's absolutely fine. No, a general approval for the minutes tends to be actually fine.
We then move on to the actions and follow-ups, page 5. Over to you guys.
Page 5.
Obviously, we provided updates on every item, so everything has been checked and updated. I don't think there's any other further updates since the agendas were issued. Does anyone have any questions on those?
Anybody else? I've got one. Minute 26, the HMRC in respect of that charge on sports provision and reimbursement invoice customers is in progress. How far are we down that path? And what happens when we reach the end of that list and there's still money in the pocket?
Well, we have started the process. We've written to a number of companies and asked them to give us details of who's eligible to, and only 10% have come back to us. So we're doing another trench, another list that the leisure centre manager gave me, and we're going to try and get more on board. What the idea is, hopefully they will supply us with information as to what they would like, because not everybody might want to reclaim because it affects their VATable element. So depending on who will claim and say they want the money back, we will make sure the figures match with what we have to what they are claiming, and then we will reimburse them. But at the moment, we haven't had anybody give us data as to give.
So do we have a,
Just to add to that,
Okay.
might help, in addition to that, with this second round of correspondence, we will set a deadline for responses so that there is a
Yes.
cut-off.
Could we do it need to have a cut-off?
Yes.
We won't continue.
And then whatever's left will go into reserves?
It's already in an earmarked reserve.
It's in a reserve, but yes, it is at the moment.
So it's being moved into a reserve that we can use outside this requirement.
Yes.
Great. Sorry about that. Any other questions?
Chairman. Okay, can I ask about item 73, which was last updated on the 11th of June about a borehole at the allotments? I wonder if the amenities team have now been able to investigate?
No, they haven't, and that is still one action outstanding for the team who've been a person down for a period of months, which is ending.
Okay. If there isn't any more comments, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Next item. Budgetary control, page 8. 8 and 9.
So just to note, these are the figures of month 9. Firstly, in expenditure, just note there is an error in there, which we've only literally just noticed, which will be corrected, which is capital projects shows a sum of 45,000, which is not correct. It's actually, it should be 20,000, which obviously does actually affect the overall figure, but is at 100%. So that's an error which will be corrected in the minutes. Excuse me. Other points to note, democratic costs, expenditures lower due to a reallocation of staff costs in relation to national insurance, employers' national insurance and pension contributions, which I'll explain a bit more about later, where we've done some reapportionment and particularly going into next year to more accurately reflect costs against specific facility services. And in income, probably points to note, central costs showing, excuse me, under due to some town centre partnership office cost recharge, which has also been shown differently. So we've made some changes in the budget, which will make next year's not as easy to compare with this year, because we've had to move some budget cost codes around. But I'll explain a bit more about that when we get to that part of the agenda. If there's any questions.
Any questions? No. Right, we'll move on. So 5B. Note the payments as expected, appendix page 10 and 11 and 12. Any exams not here? Anyone else would like to pick up anything? You're all okay with that? Okay, that was just a note. The final item on this agenda item is the CCLA PSDF funds on page 15.
And everything is good, doing very well at the moment with the CCLA.
Can you try and speak up, please?
Sorry, we are still doing very well with the CCLA, and hopefully we will meet the budgets that we've set ourselves for the income.
Okay, any questions now? Quick centre update, page 16.
Thank you, Chair. So it's just to note room hiring from there, which is tracking slightly above budget in the year, which is there at 72,329, which is the figure end of December. One thing to note that we are looking at is that from April this year is a new bookings and finance system, which means we'll be able to delve deeper into some of this information, and that we presented differently going forwards, which was something that had been mentioned previously. But we've now set those forwards in motion, so we'll be able to provide that in a more detailed way. And that will also inform the business plan for this centre going forward. So.
Any questions? No? We're almost at full budget. 73.5. So should probably exceed the budget. Be disappointed if we didn't. Yes. Okay. Okay. Investment Subcommittee, page 17. I was there, so this was a first meeting for a little while on the investments. The main thing, I think, as you can see on page 17, was that the Treasury Management Strategy was reviewed, and there were some changes. If you want to talk through.
There were a couple of changes in wording. Particularly, there was item 7.2 in the strategy, which needed rewording because it essentially sounded like that position wouldn't be able to change during the year in terms of if the council decided to do something else. So that's been reworded slightly. And a section was added to include a comment about general reserve levels and where those should aim to sit, and that will be reviewed every year. So that was a section that's been added in, and you'll see that in red in the document.
That's page 21. Is the red. It's something, we've had an informal minimum level of general reserves. This is formalised it now, which is probably very good. So 500,000. What that does is, in essence, ties any council going forward to make sure that if there is any drawdown on general reserves, because expenditure exceeding income, that's not allowed to happen if the impact is taking it below 500,000. So I think that's pretty good. Thank you for that one. Page 22, 7.2, so that's the one. So on page 22, 7.2, I can talk about this one. It basically, all it used to say was the council currently has no long-term investments and none are envisaged, which is a bit of a block, because there may be situations where we want to make a long-term investment in the future. So it just loosens that up a bit. I think that was it. I will draw your attention as well to page 25, which is our loan schedule. So this is all the loans we've got outstanding, including the three for potential 2 million. Some of them are bizarre, so like 60 years, so we won't be paying it off to 2044, and the interest rates are incredibly high on some of these, which, why on earth would you have a 40-year loan? But hey, we are where we are, okay? And you can see in there which ones are coming out next year, 40-year one actually, 2026, and then obviously the big one is the Open Centre. What that means in 2026, we will have, this council will have a choice. We either just say, great, the payment, the capital and interest payment is no longer there, we'll just put that into standard revenue or reserves, or the other option is to look at potential big capital projects. Because we know we've got some coming up, particularly in the leisure centre. So we could actually take another loan out on the basis of we're already paying X out on the interest and capital on an existing loan. If we keep it to that level, if we can, then it's not making any impact because that's what we've been paying. etc. But that's for another day. So moving on,
So Chairman,
sorry.
could I just ask, do we receive an income for the borough using the airfield centre?
So it was, I think 2 years ago now, the council received its kind of stake back from its investment in the centre at that time, which is now in an earmarked reserve, capital receipts earmarked reserve, which was 89,000 and something. And that concluded that this council's interest in the centre in terms of how it operated. It was supposed to have been historically a management committee and things that would oversee youth services and things at the centre, but it hadn't happened and those services dwindled down and was the need for something else, which is why this council decided to withdraw it.
Any other questions?
Yes, hello, me.
Okay, yes, Robert, sorry.
Hi, Keith, thank you. Can we not get Dave Bishwick down to come and sort out some of these interest payments on these?
That would be difficult.
Seriously, can we, the 60-year one on the Chapel Hall, is there any opt-out where we can actually pay this off? Because we're paying, goodness knows how much total in interest.
Good. It's a good question, Robert. It's one that I've asked many, many times over the last 10 odd years.
Yeah.
It's a public works loan board and they have a mechanism, and correct me if I get
Yes.
this wrong, you can test me on this, is that if you want to pay off early, which is what a sensible thing would be, what they do is they look at it, what the interest rate is at the time you pay it off. And then what they do is retrospectively charge the difference between the interest rate you've been paying and the interest rate that it's today. And it's the classic, not two-way, it's a one-way. So that if the interest rate is lower today than what you're paying, they say tough. If it's higher than you're paying, they say you've got to pay this extra money. And basically, it just doesn't make sense to do it. Did I get that right?
Financially, they won't change the interest element we would have to pay regardless when we settle, unfortunately. As with most insurance companies, that they want to make their money that they have given us when in 1984.
So
It would cost you.
It would cost us.
About some of the loan to the end of the term if you paid it tomorrow.
plus extras.
Yeah.
It's no different to a mortgage. If you want to pay your mortgage off early, there is a premium to be paid. Unfortunately. Okay.
Yeah, but I save quite a bit of interest paying my mortgage off early. Okay, can we never take out a loan over 60 years again? That just seems absolutely bonkers.
I think you can see from the track record, we don't. I think there's a much better financial control here with officers, etc. I can't even see a 40-year loan. Possibly a 20-25 year maybe, but it just doesn't make financial sense. Okay, can we move on?
One question.
Yeah, yes, Charles, sorry.
I want to ask half the question, but obviously with his loans, do you actually have a hard asset on the freehold and pay off as a freehold? So it counts as your only asset and you get
It's a mixture, isn't it?
Sorry, it was on your asset.
So I think it's a mixture. So for instance, when we pay off the loan, we've got a hard asset, which is.
Yes,
the building.
sorry, yes.
But in some cases, it's improvement. So like adding a gym to the leisure centre. You know, you can't really say that gym is
Increases the
necessarily an
value.
asset, but it increases the value of the asset it sits in.
Yeah, almost like a house, you take extension on.
Yeah,
It's about-
same.
So has
Some of that was to do with improvements to the lake, for example, and pathways and things. So although
So if you say
someone
someone said to you, has the council got any hard assets? If they have, what do you say? When you say the list of hard assets on here, or just go on loans and so forth? With the list of that, or
not in here, but in our asset register, which list all of those.
Which you can have access to.
Yes,
As
Yeah.
council.
you can look at the asset register.
All right. Okay, then I'll move on. Oh, yeah, we just have to vote on the updated treasury management strategies, the highlights in red. All those in favour, please show.
And there's 4 of you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, great, thank you. Risk management subcommittee. Page 26. Is there anybody here that's on that? Greg, would you like to give us a summary?
Well, the risk register was gone through. The strategy is as it appears. I don't think there's anything particular to point out. I don't know, Kevin, do you want to?
Yeah, perhaps a couple of things just to add. The risk management strategy document itself was unchanged from previously. The risk register, which is the larger document, which is split between services, the more lengthy document. You'll see there that new comments that are added are in the far right-hand column in green, just for reference going forwards. And the disaster recovery plan, which was the other document reviewed, you'll see that there are updates to the information included in there. Those updates are in red. And there is a document outstanding which is being worked on, which is the IT risk assessment, which we're working through with a new provider at the moment, which goes hand in hand with that disaster recovery plan. Councillor Hawkins, got his hand up, Chair.
Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Keith. Yeah, just to say that although we only had an hour over this meeting, which David chaired very well, considering the amount of data we had to go through, we did, we kept council officials on their toes, and you'll notice that we've added in some dates on the actions and comments, so things that aren't open-ended, that we actually bring things to a conclusion, whether it be in a financial year or by a date. So I hope councillors notice that and that they accept this report. Thank you.
Chair, there's just one thing that's been brought. I've been asked after the meeting on the 14th of January, with regards to page 43, there's play areas, and I've been asked to bring to this committee's attention that Weeble Park doesn't appear to have gates to keep dogs out, and so the councillor brought it to my attention, wanted to increase the risk, but
Decrease the risk, sorry.
or decrease if gates put.
I think the answer is probably gates, which I will pick up with the immediacy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
There's actually a bollard there at the moment, isn't there? There's actually a bollard at the moment. Weeble Park.
What's the bikes going through?
Sort of small cars running through them.
Yeah.
Any other comment? No? So there are 3 recommendations, which you can see on 1, 2, and 3, appendix A, B, and C. With your permission, I'd like to take them on block. Okay. All those in favour, please show.
Or 4, thank you.
Yeah. Capital project schedule, page 81.
So just to note changes since the last meeting, the community halls having their kitchens replaced over the coming weeks. That work's already happened. Coronation Hall kitchen is midway through. And to note that the 3G pitch repairs and the new recycling bins in Woodford Park, those 2 projects are now completed.
Any questions?
No.
Okay, let's move on. Thank you for that. Charges. 2025-26. And there's a report as well. budget estimates?
No, so, but.
There isn't a report.
This is the, yeah, so it's just the comment in the agenda, but the charges there are split, for consideration. So initially, excuse me, the Oakwood Centre charges on pages 1 and 2 of the charges appendix. So just to note that these follow the discount structure that was approved a couple of years ago, with discount rates set as a percentage reduction from a standard business rate, just so that that's standardised, and as any increases or adjustments are applied, they filter through those other rates. The proposed charges show a 2.7% increase based on the RPI rate at September 2024, which is consistent with the approved charges at the allotments and the recommendation from Leisure Services for charges in community halls. And just to note, these rates are considered to continue to represent value for money and provide an appropriate discount structure to accommodate Woodley residents and charities. And also, just to note, as an aside, the council did approve a scheme of delegation some time ago to enable officers to apply a maximum of 20% additional discount to the appropriate rate for any hire where it meets certain criteria, i.e. it's a particularly easy booking from our perspective, or a very long-term one, or has some other benefits. So it just leaves that scope for charging, but within a structure.
So just to clarify, where it says non-Woodley residents 20%, that doesn't mean that any non-Woodley resident that does a booking gets 20% off. What it means is there is the opportunity to give a 20% to non-Woodley.
Sorry, just to be clear, the non-Woodley resident rate here is a discount from the standard business rate, which is the standard rate.
So who pays on that basis? Whoever pays the standard business rate? Because they're either non-Woodley residents or Woodley.
Business bookings, rather than individuals. It was the difference. So the scheme of delegation that I mentioned was the potential for up to a maximum of 20% from an applicable rate for any booking. But yes, the standard business rate is the.
So with the booking software and what have you, we'll be able to get a mix of take the various rooms. We'll be able to find out in a year how many people get the zero, how many 20, how many 37.5, because we would personally, I wouldn't want us to have too many getting
and
big, large.
What I would expect to be reporting going forwards with that system is that breakdown by room and by rate and by capacity, so that we can see the capacity of rooms in terms of bookings and exactly where that income comes from. So,
Any other questions? Final comment on that before we go to the vote is you will notice that applying the 2.7% increase, you get silly numbers, .31, .47, .63. So I have asked Kevin to look next year about doing it slightly differently, maybe always rounding up, possibly even a minimum, because I think some of these there's 20p increase, so maybe we have a minimum 50p increase. These are just ideas, by the way, that we need to look at. Also, it takes the RPI at September, but if the previous 6 months, for argument's sake, 27%, that means the cost would have been 20% higher. When you go to the September date, that point, you're not recovering that 27% RPI. So again, I've asked them to go forward, look at, is there a better way of doing that? Maybe aggregating it, or maybe picking the highest, or just a straight average or something, because I think we need to be acuter in some of these charges, because I think that will also help with our financial situation going forward. Robert?
Sorry, me again. Keith, going by what you've just said, why can't we do that now and make £28.30 and make the £25 and 5p just £25? Why can't we just round those up and down now?
If the committee wants to do that, I was giving people time, the officers time.
The only thing I would add is when the discount rates were set a couple of years ago, the issue we'd had was because rates had been rounded quite a lot over years, depending on different rooms, we were getting different sort of discounts for different residents on different rooms because those percentages weren't being applied. So the principle of having a standard rate from which discounts are then set helps us to make sure that the gaps between those in every room remain the same. So that is the benefit for us. I think we'd be very happy to look at that and see what variation we can have in terms of being able to give a more rounded figure whilst having those figures maybe in the background for calculation. But I think it might take us some time just to have a look into it and check. But this is the same approach we applied last year anyway.
But you could actually say up to 37.5, up to, which gives the freedom, flexibility there.
This has already been discussed at Leisure Services before it came to us.
Not the Oakwood Centre charge. The Oakwood Centre charges sit with this committee to determine. The leisure services ones, which are set on the further pages on that, pages 3, 4 and 5, they have been considered under those grounds and they have been recommended for this committee to approve.
I think we have to go with these, but on the even different basis that Leisure Services Committee have already approved theirs, that is. Okay?
I would have thought that we could have put it to the nearest 10 pence at least, make it instead of a point, at 3p.
Or we have to, I mean, within a year, that wouldn't provide too much of a discount difference within each room, that would be fine. But if then next year you base your rates on the standard rate, again, that's where the issue we have. So I think it could work absolutely fine, but we would just need to go and run through the figures and make sure that we were keeping those rates as near as possible to kind of those discount rates.
I think it's unwise to rush into all these ideas. It needs to be thought out. It needs to be reviewed by this committee.
And obviously when the charges are calculated, it can be on a variety of number of hours, 4 hours, 4.5 hours. So the figures change anyway.
Yes.
And so those pence sometimes are round figures, sometimes not round figures. So, and from the team's point of view, it's not too difficult. They've got an internal calculator, which with a few, just literally putting in the hours tells them the total cost. So for a customer, it's just your total cost is X. And I don't think we don't get many complaints that total cost might be a matter of pence as opposed to a rounded figure. And with bank transfers now, it's less of an issue as it is with a leisure centre that still takes quite a lot of cash payments, and that's why they do keep their figures to rounded figures, because it's very difficult from others from this century.
But the expectation would be sometime over the next 2 or 3 S&R committee meetings, they will come up with a proposal. So we've looked at this, we've looked at that, here's the upside of this, here's the downside of that, and then we won't wait until we've got this to decide. It'll be a forward. Right, so we've got 2 items here to vote on. One, which is the Oakwood Centre, which we have, are responsible for the job. One is the Leisure Services Committee, the rest of them. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to take the 2 together. All those in favour, please show.
4-4, thank you.
Right. Item 11 is item 11, revised estimates 2024-25, page 82, and separate, excuse me, separate document, the big one.
So these are the budget estimates for the 2024-25 year-end income expenditure falling under this committee. Overall income is expected at just over 520,000. it's around 143 over original budget and includes a couple of things which have impacted that. One being the release of earmarked reserve funds in the year from redundant or unused earmarked reserves, and also income from funds invested in the CCLA. Just an item to note is the Woodley Town Centre Partnership budget is presented differently to previously, with the change being rather than it being shown as an allocation to that budget line, as has previously been shown. In reality, it's a budget line the same as in our other cost centres and treated accordingly at the end of the year. So that affects how the figures are presented, but not the budget itself. It's just shown in a different way in the budget. Expenditure is expected to be £1,629,037. That's around 184 higher than the original budget, and that includes expenditure on numerous capital projects which this committee was able to approve in year for investments in the buildings predominantly. And sorry, yes, that's it for the revised budget estimates. There'll be some questions.
Any questions?
Really? History timeline.
Yes.
What is it? Sir?
Okay, that was approved by this committee. It's a project to commemorate 50 years of the town council and involves the installation of a timeline down the corridor, which shows significant events, buildings, things like that through a period of time in Woodley.
What's the status report?
Yes, we're talking to manufacturers about the detail from sort of technical perspective, and the artwork for the illustrations are well underway. We've received many of those, so it's well underway.
And do we plan the mayor to unveil?
Yeah, we haven't looked at the unveiling at this point, so we're just waiting for until we've got confirmation of the date. But yes, we will want to do something.
Could we potentially get previous space?
Look at that.
It would be quite nice. Those that are still living in the area or still alive. Okay, so no more questions. So you've got two things: note the contents and the revised estimate. All those in favour, please show.
Or four.
All four.
Or four.
Right, so and now we go to next year. I think, yes, budget estimates 2025-26, page 83, and obviously separate.
Yes, so each budget line in each cost code has been considered by the relevant budget holding manager to take account of expected impact on income and expenditure. So we do go through every single line in there. As I mentioned earlier, there are some changes to the budget structure that make it a bit more difficult to compare some of those budget lines in next year with those in this year. That's largely due to changes we've made in codes for consistency and accuracy, as well as a reapportionment of staff costs, particularly in relation to employers' national insurance and pension contributions, which were held or shown rather centrally rather than against the service for which the cost is incurred. So some of that has now moved into leisure cost codes, where those costs are associated with leisure services rather than under a central cost coming under strategy and resources. What that will do going forward is enable us to better assess the cost of running those services, rather than it being slightly skewed by some of those figures shown centrally. So in terms of income, overall the S&R committee income is expected to be just over 369,000 in the year. It's lower than the estimate in 24-25, which did include unanticipated income related to land at Silver Fox Crescent and the release of some earmarked reserve funds, which I mentioned earlier on, which made that higher. Again, there's a presentational change here in the town centre partnership budget, which rather than showing the allocation is accounted for at the year end, in the same way as the other budget lines. We're expecting just over 26,000 in community infrastructure levy income in the year, and the other change you will see, there is an income line in relation to the Memorial Ground charity, and the arrangements for this will be explained a little more fully at full council. The Memorial Grounds accounts don't form part of the town council's accounts, and that was a regulatory change that was made some time ago. However, we've taken some advice from the internal auditor and our accountant on how to better show how that works. Ultimately, full council and through a meeting of the trustees of the charity, there will be an agreement for the town council to carry out maintenance work to maintain the ground, and that the charity will donate its income in the year every year to the council, so that it's not an income and expenditure as such, so it's not considered as being accounted for in that way. But it does mean that members will be able to see the income from the memorial ground because it will be donated to the council. Sorry, that was a really long-winded way of explaining that line. That will be explained more on full council because you need to make a decision on that. I've lost my place. So, sorry, moving on to expenditure. The committee's overall expenditure is expected to be 1,233,568 for the year. It's lower than the revised estimates for 24-25, and as I mentioned, does reflect the reapportionment of some of those staff costs to more appropriate cost centres. Conversely, the Oakwood Centre expenditure, for example, shows an increase where those staff costs have also been reapportioned to the Oakwood Centre rather than being shown centrally. And to note, both the income and expenditure do take into the account repayment of loans in the year in relation to the Oakwood Centre and the corresponding reduction in interest received on the funds to pay those off. So it's a kind of double-edged thing. We reduce our outgoings once we pay those off. Obviously, we won't have those funds in the CCLA attracting interest. Any questions?
Okay. Can I just, at this point, before I throw it open, Kevin's mentioned a couple of times now about the apportionment of NI, pension funds, staff costs. That makes it almost impossible to do year-on-year comparison. So for this current year and next year, you can't really do it. Obviously, next year and the year after will be on the same level. So, but the other thing that is important in doing this is it'll be much clearer and more visibility on the profitability or not of discrete entities like the leisure centre, like the Oakwood Centre, like cricket, for instance, or whatever, which is very difficult at the moment if costs are being apportioned elsewhere to say we need to do something with facility X to either reduce expenditure, boost income, both, or whatever. And I think the objective going forward is to be much easier for the relevant standing committee to actually make those decisions and see how things are going. So I think it's a great step forward. Should have done it many, many years ago. So any questions on this, please? All right, so we've got 2 recommendations. Note the contents and approve the budget estimates 25-26. All those in favour, please show. 4-4. Right. So that was okay. So that was A. B is recommendations from other committees, which are in this document. So that is green and green pages. I don't know whether there's any questions or anything on that. It's been reviewed. I sat in on the Leisure Services Committee and they did a good job of reviewing the plan, a very small budget anyway. So if that's okay with the committee, I'll go straight to the vote on B. All those in favour, please show. 4. Right, next. Budget and precept, page 84.
So, page 84 provides some explanation on some of the processes and terminology included in the report. The key considerations here are the council's reserves, which consist of the unallocated general reserve and allocated earmarked reserves, which have been set up for specific projects and purposes. The general reserve at the start of the year was just over 789,000, and the revised estimates anticipate a contribution requirement from the general reserve at year end of £106,292. There is a typo in the report, it says 107,000, the figure is 106,000.
Can you find another typo? Get it down another 105.
Well, actually, it says 106, I think it's 107 somewhere else.
Oh, it might be 107. One at that figure on.
The right one here.
If I can refer at this point to the budget forecast on page 1 of the budget appendix, which is the coloured landscape document there that did show. You will see there a reserve figure titled under total net expenditure under that revised estimates column. So that shows what I'm talking about there in terms of that contribution from. This would mean an anticipated general reserve at the 1st of April 2025 of 682,768, which you can see just to the left of the yellow line there. The level at which the general reserve is maintained is for the council to decide, taking into account its income, expenditure, liabilities, and crucially other earmarked reserves. And just for some context, the JPEG, or the Joint Panel on Accountability and Governance, advise that that's between 3 and 12 months net revenue expenditure, and likely to be nearer 3 months for larger councils. But again, it's a guide and needs to be considered in the context of earmarked reserves held by the council as well. And we have rejigged those and structured those so that we've got adequate earmarked reserves specifically for the council's assets to be able to put Central Walford Park Leisure Centre. Have changed the way we do that in the last couple of years.
On the plug-in charging thing, though, my sort of earbud things in a little box, I think they are.
Well, that's not in the report.
I don't think they're in the little box, you know, Beth. I think they're in the can, isn't it, underneath the kitchen sink? We heard it all.
I'll speak up. So it's as Keith mentioned earlier, it's recommended that given the council's current income and expenditure, that the general reserve should aim to remain above £500,000 in the year.
Approved. It's not recommended, it's approved.
Well, it's
Oh,
it's
not in a
approved
little
as
box.
No.
Oh, and it
What
looks
they
at,
look like.
it's about
Yeah, no,
square. Oh,
It's sitting for you.
In addition, the council has earmarked reserves of 611,000. That's in addition to the £2 million in the CCLA fund to pay the principal on the Equid Centre loans. Those are shown on the last page, on page 43 of the budget appendix, shows a breakdown of all of the earmarked reserves. So during this coming financial year, we're looking to develop a 3-year strategic plan as a mechanism for better forward planning. So members will see this presented differently through strategy and resources going forwards. The precept setting, higher levels of general reserve over the last few years have enabled the council to maintain or lower the precept with the general reserve supporting that expenditure. And there are, of course, three ways that the council can meet that balance. Those being increasing income from our income generating activities, reducing expenditure, or from the precinct. On page 86, that paragraph starts with increasing income from the precept. The first sentence there states that the current level of income and expenditure will require an increase in precept over the coming years to maintain a sufficient general reserve. I'd like to add some context to that statement. What that's referring to is future years, so from 20 to 26, 27, in relation to maintaining a general reserve of above 500. As mentioned previously, that does make some assumptions about income and expenditure. Isn't necessarily the case should there be change in income during the year or in expenditure. And again, if I can refer just to that budget forecast summary and the closing balance line under the impact on general reserves, you can see the impact of different scenarios there ranging from 0% to 5%, and that's also included in the table in the report. You'll see that in the column to the right, in the grey column, that shows what the potential impact is 26, 27. So as that goes forward, you kind of follow that over. But as I said, that makes some assumptions about what might happen in the year. Key to this process going forwards will be the strategic plan, which I just mentioned, and looking further ahead, and gives us an opportunity to carry out better consultation with residents about what the council is doing, what it's funding, and again, just going back to those reallocation of costs, having a better picture of where the council's costs lie in relation to specific services. So the recommendations are that that proposed budget be presented to full council for approval, and the precept level be considered by this group with a recommendation to full council.
Thank you, Kevin. Quick question for you. The illustration has got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 next year. Every one of those is actually satisfies our financial requirements.
Yes.
Thank you. So the other thing, I would add a recommendation here, because I think it's important, on the consultation. Because I would like to draw that out, because it's a key thing, I believe, going forward. Something that we've never done before. I don't think either people working have done it before. The borough does. I think we should follow that, but I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. My recommendation to the committee is a 0%. Can't reduce it for the reasons we've made, but I think at the current financial climate for our residents, we have to think of our residents, it's really tough. It's tough with things like on pensioners with the winter fuel allowance. It's tough on businesses and therefore jobs because of the national insurance changes. It's tough right the way around for residents. And so my rationale for 0 is really, I think we ought to be doing something this year with recognition that the following years, when we get the numbers, and that's where the consultation comes in, it's very important, that we will certainly start sneaking it up or go for a big one and then nothing. But for this year, because of the current cost of living crisis, energy prices going up for everyone, etc., I would recommend a 0%. Just to back it up as well, we've already talked about that we can't compare this year to last year, unfortunately. So we haven't got a base point. We can't sort of say that's better or worse than what happened. So a 0% is effectively just leaving it as is, but a lot of work needs to be done for the next 12 months for the following year. The other thing is just a bit of data. These guys do an amazing job putting all this stuff with Ash. Sorry, Ash. They do an amazing job putting this all together. But at the end of the day, look at all the lines. There's hundreds and hundreds of lines. they are speculation. They are guesses on what's going to happen. Assumptions of 5% inflation rates or whatever. At the best, that's all they are. And it's reflected year after year that and I'm concentrating on the General Reserve, year after year, the projected drawdown of General Reserves has been typically 50%. So 23-24, for instance, the budget suggested a contribution from reserves of 116k. At the end of 23-24, it was actually 69k, roughly half. 24-25, as you can see here, the budget was a contribution of reserves of 166k. It looks as though it's going to be like 92k. And reserves is the critical thing here. And as long as we don't go below 500k, we've now written that into statute. I think we don't have to worry too much at this moment in time about the reserves. Now, I mentioned the consultation. I've been talking to Matt and Kevin about what we should be doing. And they're going to bring together a set of proposals, which needs to get to here as soon as practically possible. And we need to do it properly. I'm thinking of something like a 6-month program, possibly a card or something to every householder, making suggestions, what would you actually be prepared to pay extra? Because we don't know. We might think, people are paying a lot more, but they might not. And we need that data. We're talking about potentially having residents' meetings here, where we talk through the options, etc. It's critical that we get the maximum engagement of our residents, so that when we're sitting here next year, and it's what are we going to have? What's the number? We'll have the facts to back it up. So that if we're thinking, we need a 12% increase, and the feedback from everyone is like 6 or 7%, we'd be stupid, I think, fools, to take the 12%. We've got to find some other way. It's that grounding, which is why I want the consultation to be a separate recommendation, because that should drive everything that's going on. And I could see if it is successful, we then have it an annual event. Alison.
We put something into the budget to cover the costs of, an excellent consultation, which is what we want, and maximum participation. We're not going to get for free.
I'm looking at my colleagues.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to look at that, and if we do need to allocate some funds to it, we can do that. So, but we haven't got that far with it yet.
In many respects, it's better to do that than have an issue of the Woodley Herald.
Oh, no, I'm not.
No, I
saying
understand.
definitely, I'm supportive of what you're proposing, Keith. But, we mean, I don't want the money to be taken away from something else.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No?
Yes.
Chris.
Hi. Sorry. I hope I don't sound too garbled. I've made a few notes here, and I hope I don't come across too rushed. Keith, I just want to pull you up on something. You said about sneaking up the rate in future years. I'm sure that was a verbal error, where you didn't actually mean that we would be sneaking it up. We would just be reviewing it. Going on to the consultation, surely as elected town councillors, our constituents will come and tell us if they are happy or not happy with any changes to the precept. You mentioned earlier just now about a 12% increase. Well, if we put an increase in this next year, we won't need to do a 12% increase. Now, yesterday I was at a strategy meeting for the council down here where I live, and they're putting in a 7.5% increase, taking the precept to 240 quid. It's shockingly expensive down here, and I know we shouldn't compare the two. The borough council increase, I don't think the number's been announced, but it's going to be 5%, let's face it. So in a Band D property, that's going to be somewhere in the region just north of 20 quid a month. So I think if we were to give a percentage increase now to our precept, we wouldn't have to put necessarily such a big one in future years. And people who are spending 240 odd pounds a month wouldn't necessarily notice an extra £3 or £4 each month on their council tax as a proportion from Woodley Town Council. I think that's covered everything I want to say, because of course the NI's gone up. What's to say it's not going to go up again in future years? So I think we should increase it, all by a small margin, so there isn't a sudden big jump in future years. I hope that makes some sense. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just clarify, because I think Councillor Hoskins mentioned sort of £3 a month. The figures that are in that sheet are annual figures. They're not monthly figures. So you would be divided. So if you were talking about figures in there and the increase, just to make sure it's clear, they're an annual figure.
Thank you, Matthew. That adds gunpowder to my ammunition, or something like that.
Okay, Robert, thank you for that. It is the counter argument, little and often, as opposed to big and not very often. They're both valid approaches. My personal view, and it'll be down to the committee, is that now is not the time to increase. You've just actually reinforced it, the fact that the borough council is going to be putting 5%. So not only have pensioners lost their fuel allowance, energy prices going up, potentially loss of jobs because the NI going up and the trigger point coming down, the borough council going up 5%. And I take your point, it's a cup of coffee concept.
Yeah, but Keith, the borough council.
Excuse me, Robert. It's a concept that, thank you, that has been aired many, many times. It doesn't take much traction. And the other data point is 1% on our precept only brings in £11,000. So, to be perfectly honest, doing a 1% or 2%, looking at the figures, ain't going to make much difference. You've got to go up quite big to shift the figures significantly. So 5% is roughly 55,000, right?
Thanks, Keith. I'm not arguing. I'm just putting obviously another point of view. You said about, yes, we shouldn't make an increase now because Woking was going to put it up by 5%. Rest assured, they'll put it up 5% next year and the year after. You know, I can't see this ever changing. Going what you just said, I think we should. Obviously, I can't make a proposal and I can't have a vote, but let's put it to the committee as nothing or 5%, please. Thank you.
You've got a second. You cannot actually make that proposal, but I'm.
No, I can't propose. No.
I think you can put something to the vote.
Okay, I'll do it on your behalf. All right. All those in favour of zero? Are we all done?
Yeah.
Go to the vote.
Who's seconding?
I think if you've got somebody in the room who can propose in second.
Right. So I'm proposing 0%. So I need a second for.
I'll second that.
Okay. So right. All those in favour for 0%, please show.
Or 4.
Anybody want to propose? I'll propose the 5%. Anybody want to second the 5%? Can't really do that now, can we?
You can't.
I think it's a bit convoluted. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, Robert.
No, don't do it now. You've done that. That's fine. Thank you. But I do think we should have had this discussion. That's fine. Thank you very much.
Well, they hope that you're right about we should have had this discussion earlier. That is one of the reasons why we've got the consultation is so critical, because at the moment, and it's the same for what, the last 20 years, these guys work their butts off, looking at everything, then they present it to one meeting of planning, one meeting of leisure service, one meeting of S&R. We then debate it like we've just done, and then it goes to full council for ratification. The plan, if it works, do this consultation, And the budget for planning, for leisure services and S&R will come to an earlier meeting of S&R. All right, they may well have to be a private meeting, but to look at the options and make a much better informed decision as councillors. That's my end game.
It's better.
Yeah, if we can get that. Alison?
I suspect there'll be quite a debate at full council. Another motion could be put to full council, could it? Proposing
They'd have to turn down the recommendation, but yeah.
Yeah, so this isn't, there is a larger forum for this to come, yeah, Rob.
It's got to be ratified by the full council. And if it's not ratified by full council, then an alternative has to be made at that full council. They need to turn up.
Yeah, I think I might pop up and see you. You never know. Got some new leggings to wear.
Are they the ones with the meshes?
Moving on.
Right, okay. Thank you, guys.
We did skip ahead, so we haven't.
Oh.
All we've done is because we went very straight to the precept, we just missed
Okay.
the simple proposal of the full.
Know the contents, and so the second.
It's that.
First and second, and the short one with the content.
Yeah.
All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Right. Community grants, item 13, page 87. We've got one grant to review, and then we've also got to the ratify the
Yeah, there are two. No, it's not the 350. There are two items on here. So we've had a late community grant application. We normally consider community grant applications twice a year in April and November. Historically, when there's budget left over, if we then get any further ones, they do come to the committee to see if we spend the budget. So we received an application here from, as you've seen, Me Too Club. They're asking for £250, not the full grant of 350, to recruit and screen 5 new volunteers. The second item on the agenda, item B, was requested at this committee in November, which was to reconsider whether the amount of individual grants could be increased. You'll recall that this committee considered that for organisations earlier in the year, and increased the amount from 250 to 350, but didn't at the time increase the grants to individuals. Just to support that, I provided on page 89 just some information on the last 10-year average of grants awarded, just so you can see the amounts that we've given out, the number of grants we've given out, and the total amount of grants, just to give you some background so that, you don't say put it up to 500 and realise that will blow the budget every year. So to give you some context to that.
Okay, any questions? I'm hoping people accept the 350 is a no-brainer.
Good question. How late was the application? Was there stage?
What we say is, so each year we say apply by the 31st of March for applications to be considered in the April S&R, and the 31st of October to be considered in the November Strategy and Resources. Because it's a budget set for the year, there's no restriction really on when that is spent through the year, but that's to give people general time during the year to make those applications and be considered. But if there's budget left over, we've always brought those applications back to a future meeting until the end of the financial year, when any money that's unspent will simply remain in the general reserve.
Any questions on it? I'll make a comment, as I always do. There's only 8 Woodley members of the Me Too, which I'm surprised. I thought the Me Too would have had more members from Woodley, and only 8. It's really.
Do we know how many of the 180 volunteers are from Woodley?
Looking at who's benefiting, there's only 8 children out of 157.
But I think the application is specifically to recruit and screen volunteers for 5 Woodley children. Will we?
So
what happens if they can't find 5 local authorities.
They put the money into a pot waiting to get 5, which I think is more, personally. The one thing we need to just be cognizant of now is we had a late application, or we didn't have an application, they were too late and they couldn't get themselves organised for one of the big grants, that we have.
The annual grant. So we're one applicant or one organisation that historically has applied to us for an annual grant, missed the deadline, and because of that, they didn't get an application to us in time to be in the agenda for the budget setting, which is what that is included in. Because of that, there was no way of retrospectively changing those budget documents. It's a slightly different process to this, which is obviously a budget is set of £3,000 for the year, and then within that year, applications are made and that budget is spent, which is
Is that clear in the guidelines?
in what sense? Well, so what we want, what I would say is,
somebody might come along and say, hang on a minute, you won't let me because I'm past.
because it's a rolling application process, what would happen if you'd spent all the budget in the November meeting and this application had come in? It would have gone to the April meeting for the next year. So it's not year specific.
Okay.
It's just so that because there's budget left in year, we can consider it as part of this year.
Right, so to the vote, for the two things, the 350 for individuals and also the Me Too. All those in favour, please show.
Can I just?
Oh, sorry.
It's not the 350 for individuals. That's notification to inform you that you increase the limits you approved previously. The request is to consider increasing the maximum grant sum which can be awarded to individual grant applicants, which is currently set at £100.
Ah.
That is just reference to show that you did agree that.
You didn't make any recommendations on that?
No, I didn't give a recommendation on the figure.
So does this mean someone has missed out on the grant because they were too late? Someone.
On the big grant, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So is that someone we normally give to, and is it a Woodley organisation?
It is a national organisation.
They've been advised of our other grant process if they want to apply for the smaller grant through this year, and they know the deadlines moving forward. They missed it. They weren't aware of the deadlines this year because it was a new notice after over. So
these grants are thousands.
Yes.
Not 100 or 250 or whatever.
No.
Have we got any money left for the April meeting?
That's the next financial year. That's the £3,000 budget you have just agreed for next year. So when you get to April, you'll be discussing applications to come out of next year.
Sorry, because council years kind of go May to May. I forgot that it was financial year.
Yeah.
Right. So
Want to vote on the community grant, the Me Too application first, and then consider that.
all those in favour of the Me Too?
That's 4-4.
And somebody want to make a recommendation? 1.5?
I would recommend, well, it's the maximum, let's remember, it doesn't mean that everybody applies will get that. So if we set it as a 250 maximum, we can still choose, and someone could apply for 100 or 150.
If you set it 250, individuals will apply for 250.
We don't.
What I would say is historically.
But if you're talking about a very talented young sports person, needs help for going abroad, represent their country, whatever, £100 is nothing. I mean, it's been £100 for 10 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, so I think you'll see back here, I think it's been £100 for a long time. As you'll see from I think it's on page 89, historically everyone does, especially on individual grants, applies for the maximum amount. Generally on the organisations too, they will. You'll see probably the most important line just to consider is based on the budgets you've had each year. If you look about 4 rows up from the bottom, you'll see, 3 rows up from the budget, you'll see total budget left over or overspent in year. So that gives you an idea based on the previous figures of 250 and 100, but based on the grants, that's the money you had left over in each year. So if you are increasing the amount and you were getting the same that you've had in previous years, it gives you an idea of how much flexibility you've got in that. If you put it to 250, then in previous years awarded, you'd have gone further over the budget.
You wouldn't, because
or you'd run out of the budget earlier. You'd run out of the budget earlier. But it's just a balance of that.
Can I ask my question? Matt, do you think the reason that we awarded 4 individual grants this year compared to non the year before that, is because we've promoted it in a much better manner so that more people are aware that there is something they can apply for?
I wouldn't say that. We've used the same sort of promotional material, putting something out in social media and things, advising that we haven't done any extra marketing or promotion, but as we've done in previous years, people have clearly picked up on it this year. I think a couple were siblings, so there's 2 in 1 there, kind of from knowledge. But there would be no specific reason we haven't changed the marketing policy on it.
I know my granddaughters both benefited from the grants, and they were both internationals. It was very difficult for them to be, you know, £100 worth much more, and that was worth more there. But I'm just thinking, you know, it is a small amount to give to someone who's trying to become an international whatever sports person, and it gives the community a boost as well to see that youngsters can actually achieve a lot. I do think we should be increasing it a little bit, but as you say, you don't have to give them the full amount. If they ask for 250, and give them 100. But
how would you make that decision? Because you wouldn't know all the expenses of going to the Olympics or European. You wouldn't know. And to be fair to everybody, I personally would not want to make that sort of decision, saying you've applied for 250 and I'm only going to agree to 150, because I couldn't base that on anything. That's the
well, it's usually when you're granting, there's usually the achievements that they've actually got already and what they have.
It's usually for paying or contributing to them. More often than not, it's to go to European Championships or the Olympics or whatever, and those sorts of costs are thousands.
Yes, they are.
Just for some further context, the amount that the grant went up, because the community grants and the individual grant rates have been the same for years.
Yes.
The increase to the community grant organisation rate increased by 40% by going from 250 to 350. So if the same 40% was applied here, it would go from 100 to 140. That's if you were looking for some sort of comparable sort of increase on that.
150.
That's another question. I mean, it appears that, you know, the budget, which was this year, was £3,000. So it's a combined budget for the 2 different grants. Never considered having sort of separate budget.
Answer is no.
Seems a little bit odd to me that it's one pot, but the 2 different kinds of things.
But it gives you the flexibility that if one bit is under subscribed, you can increase the other bit. So if you broke it out and said 2,000 for the community grants and 1,000 for individual grants, and you know, nobody applies for the individual grants, but too many people apply for the community grants, you haven't got that flexibility. That would be my view.
I mean, I'm not quite sure what I has to say, but I always thought it seemed a little bit unfair that a promising local, you know, young sports person, if they do a team sport, they're not eligible for this grant, and they've still got the same costs of travelling abroad in their team. Whereas if they're but we do award them to individuals, that's what I was told by a parent once said that you couldn't have it if it was a team sport.
I mean, if they're like a footballer or a netball player.
I think there was somebody who was going to the international dragon boat.
We haven't. That's just because there's only an organisational community grant. That's only got the community. Grant. So it has got the individuals. My understanding of the guidelines wouldn't necessarily be that, and our process, definitely since I've been here in the last few years, has been anything we've received is to bring it here for the committee to consider whether it's in line with the guidelines, rather than necessarily officers turning things down, unless there's something that's completely wrong. But yeah, we tend to let council make that decision.
So I'd like to bring this to a close. So I'm going to put on, so I'm going to propose shifting it to 150. Have I got a second there? Right, all those in favour of 150? The overall budget.
Sports scholarship, young.
It's not just sport.
Right,
Anything, young persons.
for young people.
Right. Moving on. Agenda item 14, theatre refurbishment, page 90. Who's going to take this? Nina?
Yeah, I'll take this. After the last meeting, when the committee approved funding for us to engage this consultants, we have engaged Blue Horizon consultants to work with us on making proposals for the future development of the theatre. The intention is to cover a few areas, one being the technical improvements that would be needed for the space. One is what sort of programming of events would be suitable there. And the third one is to look very much at a high level sort of business plan for the theatre. It also extends further into how that links with the Oakwood Centre business plan as well. They are intending to get the final report to the committee with some recommendations for the April committee meeting, but wanted to send an interim report to give you an update of what's happened so far. That's what's provided to you in the agenda at appendix 14 on page 90. I know that we have contacted all the existing hirers of the theatre, regular hirers, and offered them the opportunity to contact Blue Horizon directly for a telephone conversation to discuss their thoughts about the theatre. All councillors were offered the same opportunity. They've had conversations with Crum as well. So they've done quite a lot of work in terms of getting feedback from there. We've also had a survey run, we've been promoting and advertising, and that finished on Friday. We had 311 responses to that. Those responses have now been provided to, the full responses provided to Blue Horizon. What they've included in here was a part of that is about 200 of the responses by the time they had that, but they will include the full analysis of that in the final report. So at the moment, this agenda item is just to note that this interim report is here. I know from conversations with Blue Horizon that they've absolutely welcomed any feedback from councillors, and if this committee have any feedback on what's been provided so far, anything they want to make suggestions of, any inclusions they might like to see for the final report as well, they're very, very happy to take that on board. So any comments would be absolutely taken.
Those comments be crossed over to you speaking directly, or is it going to the council for yourself? They're spokesman for them, or is it?
Oh, yeah, so the email I sent out before Christmas to all councillors copied in both Julian and Lisa from Blue Horizon. They are very happy to receive those emails directly from you. They'll happily arrange a time to have a conversation with you and get your feedback and thoughts on that and discuss the project in more detail. They're very open to that. It's helpful for them.
I've actually had a conversation with them of my background in terms of Amdram and stuff.
Okay, right.
And they are very approachable, very nice. They listen, they probe, which is what you expect them to do. So if you're thinking of doing it, you have to really do it. I think you will enjoy it, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll look for the email.
So to note, safeguarding policy, item 15, page 130, right at the end.
The chair, although stated in the policy, council staff do not directly supervise young people who vulnerable adults. It is recognised that many of our clients do in our buildings, and the staff do come into contact with them. We do have a responsibility to act in an appropriate way and obviously support our staff in being able to do that. And that's the purpose of this policy. Provide a statement of the council's commitment to safeguarding, as well as the process essentially for staff to follow in addressing concerns or reporting incidents. It also identifies the responsibility of individuals, designated safeguarding lead, proposed town clerk, and the Deputy Town Clerk and Leisure Services Manager as the designated safeguarding officers, and that was an item that had been picked up previously in the risk register as well, about identifying a safeguarding need and having that policy in place. So as I mentioned, key to that policy is the incident reporting procedure, which provides clear guidance and instructions for staff, as well as the policy providing a point of reference for ensuring that safeguarding is part of the staff culture and training going forwards. And staff at the leisure centre who have more involvement and oversight of that do also undertake safeguarding online training module, which we have as part of our training package. If there's any questions about the policy?
Presumably, a copy of this would be sent to all staff.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Can we make sure all councillors have it?
Yes.
I believe we have the same responsibility for safeguarding.
Yeah. And the process is the same, that requirement.
And I would ask you to consider safeguarding training for councillors.
Yeah, I can circulate the link for that. That's certainly available for all staff.
With a strong encouragement. It is important, very important, particularly in light of all the press coverage on various things that are going on up and down the country. I'll come with you in a minute, Robert. The only other question is that all the telephone numbers here, the DSL, etc., are all daytime numbers. But this is open in the evening, so is the leisure services. So was there a conscious decision not to put a mobile number in?
Yeah, we wouldn't expect that reporting process to be an emergency one. If that was the case, then that would be the emergency service would deal with something in that way. This is more in terms of the council's operating procedures. If staff.
So do you think there ought to be a paragraph covering emergency? Because it's almost, when I take your point, it's almost as saying, as long as it happens in here and us, we're fine.
If there's a very urgent safeguarding situation, you phone the police.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is maybe that's what should be in here as well. Not Joe Bloggs and 079.
Well, I think a member of staff, if they can't go straight to Kevin, then we clearly say safety going to Matt or Ed.
We could add a line that states that clearly, if there's an emergency, you contact the emergency service and then report it.
Yeah, I work on the theory that don't assume anything. I think we're all knowledgeable, etc., and we would think about doing the police, but. Robert, your turn.
Thanks, Keith. Page 131, paragraph 3, good practice and behaviours. It says here, avoid spending excessive amounts of time alone with children, etc. When I did my safeguarding with the Scouts, it was you do not spend any time alone with any children. You always make sure you have a second person with you. And I just think that's a little bit ambiguous, because I don't think you'd be spending any time alone with children. And also, who decides what an excessive amount of time is? Any time alone is excessive in my book. Thank you.
Point 3 says avoid situations where it's possible to be left alone with children. So
Yeah. This is practice and behaviours.
if you've got point 3, I don't understand why you need that later point.
Yeah, absolutely. Scrub the later point out completely.
Yeah, it's slightly contradictory, actually.
Yeah.
So we can just.
And the final bullet of number 3 is quite clear. It says exactly what you said. That this must be done in full view of another non-vulnerable adult.
Yeah.
So just take that line out.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Can I vote to approve all those in favour of that? Thank you. We're all safe now. Climate Emergency Action Plan update.
Just to let you know what I've done this time. I know historically we've provided a full list of actions within the action plan. You have to go through that and check which ones have updates and which don't have updates. So what I've done this time is provided just the 3 items that have the updates relating to them. The full action plan is available on the website, always updated for members' information. We are planning on reviewing the climate emergency action plan as we should be doing every year, the 8th of March, and at the same time we will review all those actions, have a look at how they're set up. There is a sense internally that we would like to slightly adjust the way they're set out. A number of those actions are ongoing actions or commitments of the council, and therefore not necessarily have a targeted completion date. There are others that are more specific actions. So we want to slightly adjust the way they're shown in there just to make that document more workable for us. But yes, those 3 updates are there. That's where we've got to.
Any questions on item 17, any future agenda items? No. Publicity and website. Any items we want to publicise? Just before I close the meeting, Brian's been sat there very. Normally there's correct me if I'm wrong, but normally there is a TCMP agenda item, but I guess because of the budget stuff.
No, it's the timing. It's the timing. The meeting, because of the timing the meeting took place, the report won't have come through in time to come here. So the last meeting report will come to the next.
Yes.
The meeting has happened and Brian is here.
I know. So I'm going to give anybody the opportunity to ask any questions of Brian and Mary as the chair. I'm also on the TCMP. If you don't have any questions for him, I'm going to draw the meeting to a close.
So in the publicity, with the grant that we're giving to recruit Me Too volunteers, could we use our channels to assist them in recruiting those volunteers?
Yeah. We generally, every time we issue a grant, we will do a press item which says we've offered that grant, and what I'll do is I'll make sure that what we try and do is make sure that links people to them who might be interested in volunteers. Good angle for that.
Right, Mary?
Yeah, we're going to have the committee meetings for the Woodley Town Centre Partnership put into the Herald now as a regular basis. This last time it wasn't in October and we had a dismal turnout.
Bit like this.
Well, we just think it's got to happen, and
Please turn up.
QR code or a link to something. And actually printed in the Herald the dates.
Right.
Got you go first. When we used the Coronation Hall last week, we saw there was a box in there. Is that a Wi-Fi box? And if it is, will we be able to use it?
I suppose so, yes. Yes, of course you can, yes, that's only very recently been installed, so.
We saw it flashing and wondered what it was. So will,
Free Wi-Fi there.
will we be able to have the
Password.
or whatever?
Yes.
Esther?
It's just something I observed in Swindon. Obviously, as a shopping centre, they have empty shops where they have students explain art and that sort of thing. Have you got any ideas to do that in empty shops in the precinct?
Yeah, it comes up quite regularly, Esther. I mean, luckily we haven't got that many empty shops, although there's 4. We've tried before. There's a couple of problems. Firstly, landlords are very reluctant to let people use their properties. We find that anyway, and other towns do seem to overcome it. Probably easier when you've got a large landlord owning a number of properties, particularly in a shopping centre. It's probably a bit easier to do. We find it very, very difficult to get any commitment from landlords. And also the other issue is, and I've discussed this with Reading College in particular, getting the kind of quality of work in there that makes it look attractive. It's also a bit of a challenge. So we do keep looking at it and we keep backing away from it. It's probably on the agenda, but it's probably not a high priority, to be honest, because we do find our units, usually, I have to say, I'm pushing my luck a bit here, because really past our shops have been let out fairly quickly after they've been emptied. not quite the case at the moment. We're starting to get a little bit of rigidity in those, the NatWest and Hayes and Barnardo's have been empty for some time now, which is not like us really. I'll keep looking at it, but yeah, we do have a few problems with landlord, getting landlord permission for that.
So they want sort of like 6 months instead of having sort of a weekend or something. That was sort of almost a bit too long.
Yeah, they typically want a longer time, yes. And they're also concerned about just insurance and the usual sort of legalities around getting access to the building and making sure it's safe and all that kind of thing.
Sorry, Brian, I noticed the tattoo shop's closed now.
Yeah.
Is that another one? Then there's the cafe that was.
The Ada Hot, yeah, that is reopening, I understand, as a Vietnamese restaurant pretty soon. They're in there at the moment. They've blacked the windows out. Don't know what's happening to the tattoo shop. I mean, it always looked a bit of a large unit for a tattoo shop to me, to be honest. So not too surprised that it's going, but it's still a shame.
It's another shop though, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and yeah, the numbers are kind of creeping up a little bit. We're still well below the national average, I guess, to keep this in context. Don't know what Swindon's like. I hear Swindon is pretty tough going, to be honest.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, typically most town centres have got up to 20% of their units empty. Ours has typically been around about a quarter of that. So 5-6% has been our norm. It's creeping up a little bit.
Yeah.
We've now got 5 out of 63 units. So we're sort of 8-9% now. So getting a bit higher than we were typically used to, but still way below the kind of national average, really.
I did wonder about that tattoo shop, how long it would last, because it was my understanding was it was an overflow shop for the Reading one, which is the main shop.
Yeah.
So when they were really full in Reading, they would, for an appointment, they would send people down to Woodley.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
Right.
I just say, we must apologise for last Saturday when Thames Water decided to dig up across the centre on Friday and started digging again with the diggers Saturday morning until Jonathan managed to get them to stop. Why Wokingham actually gave the authority for that to happen on a market day when none of the Thames Water men knew there was going to be a market.
Terrible.
I think they did that 6 months ago, didn't they?
I don't know who's going to follow this up, but
Yeah.
because Wokingham should know we have a market. He just said, well, how many stalls you got? And how many people? He says, oh, hello.
I suspect the answer I'll get is fairly similar to the answer I got last time when it was like the one. Wokingham basically said the contract that they have or the agreement they have with the Thames Water, they'll come basically when it suits them. They don't have much choice in it.
But
It's annoying, and that's
we've got a
about it.
borough councillor here, we've got two.
Yeah.
Well, 3.
Three, sorry, 3 different wards as well.
Well, they stopped working. Now, there's no working there yesterday or today, and the trench is still there.
Well, that's
So why couldn't they have done it on a weekday?
I think we all, call me skeptical or something, if you like, but I suspect that probably weekend working is far more attractive than working on Tuesday. It's a nice.
Can I ask the 3 of you to talk together and, because it needs a councillor, I think, because you're talking to officers and you're going to get the only way you get these sorts of things resolved is through councillors.
It's just a collection thing. We just want the councillors to let us know in good time, and then we can have that conversation. As Mary said, why can't you do it Monday to Friday, and avoid the 2 markets we have on Saturday and Sunday?
Is this for the watering system for the garden?
No.
No.
To do with the flats there above that row of shops there. That's going down the Beechwood, the little alleyway down to Beechwood School.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
floods.
It starts at the wall and basically goes along down the alleyway there.
There used to be, a long time ago, there used to be regular meetings where all the utilities, all the bus companies, all the parish and town councillors, all the councillors were invited, and it was managed by
By Ed Day.
well, before him, actually it started, he was even
The
better.
last time they were doing it.
And that you had, each utility would stand up and say, these are our plans that we've got for the next 6 months. And it allowed people like the bus company to say, hang on a minute, how am I going to get the bus through? And individuals like myself and the parish councillors to say, you do realise we've got a market on. That was canned a long time ago. And that personally thought was the biggest mistake out, because it lost all that coordination, all that interaction between all the key stakeholders. Stupid, but it happened. And it happened on our watch, not any other party. So, right, I'm going to call it a close at
9:40.
9:40. Thank you very much, everyone.
Cheers, everyone. Well done, Keith. Bye.
Bye, Robert. You can pamper us. Love you.